I watched a young soldier take his seat on the plane, and the guy by the window said,
My name is Kirk Borger. I am the library director at the Riverview Public Library. And today we had David Nall, a longtime Riverview resident, and he's going to tell us about his experiences in the military from 1971 to 1972,
Yes.
Approximately a year and a half that you were in the service. Well, thank you for coming in today. I appreciate it. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan on July 9th, 1951.
What were your parents' occupations and how many siblings did you have?
My dad was a refrigeration guy, repairman, had his own business for a period of time, and my mom was the housewife. We had, besides myself, two brothers and a sister.
What high school did you attend?
Wayne Memorial High School in Wayne, Michigan, graduated in 1960.
What were you doing before you entered the military?
I was working for a motor company on the assembly line at Wayne Assembly, and just with the, initially it had been the onus of the draft hanging over the head of myself as well as countless millions of other young men. It was pretty hard to plan your life until you knew what was going to happen. Then it did happen.
Explain the circumstances so I'm assuming you were drafted.
Correct.
Explain the circumstances of how you found out about you.
I was in the second draft lottery in 1970. It was in approximately July, and I was sitting at a daily Coney Island restaurant with my girlfriend, drive-through place. I was eating a foot-long Coney dog when they drew the number that had the ball that had the date of my birth, and then they drew number 1, and that was how I became number 1 draftee.
And how did you feel?
I felt horrible. This is not a lottery I wanted to win. And it was like certain. There was no ambiguity to this. And then I went home. My family knew about it too, because everybody, that had a son of draft age that was in that lottery was paying close attention, because you knew you were either going to get drafted or not get drafted. Or you might be in the middle somewhere. But being number 1 was, I was going, and I did not want to be there.
There wasn't any chance of deferments or anything like that for you?
I tried, but there was nothing was working.
Wait, you tried? What did you try? Because I know there was always certain avenues of deferments.
I tried with conscientious objector, political persuasions, some other things, but none of them were successful.
How soon after you were drafted did you go into the military?
6 months later.
6 months later.
So I evaded the draft for 6 months.
Where was your basic training at?
It was in Fort Davis, Kentucky.
Can you tell us a little bit about your basic training?
It was pretty similar to everybody else's, although I was I didn't want to be there, and so I was not disruptive, but
not compliant either.
Right, but then I stayed out of trouble, and of course they wanted to promote me right away. And
why?
Because I had tested really well and a variety of things, and so they wanted to send me to West Point for other things which I wasn't no part of.
Wait, what, for specialized training or?
To become an officer.
Oh, they wanted you to
go to West Point.
Really?
Yes.
As a cadet?
Yes.
Oh, you tested that high, really?
Yes. And so when the captain of the company informed me of this, and he went on, I said, well, what would be involved? He goes, well, you'd go to West Point for 4 years, and then you'd be an officer for 5 years. I go, so that would be 9 years. I don't want to be here at all now. Why do I want to do this?
I thought they might want to go an easier route with ROTC or something like that.
Well, they would take you through a prep thing, but I mean, I tested high to place in it, and so they really had me, they really wanted me. So.
Was there anything that you liked about basic training?
No,
nothing. Now, after the basic training, you said you scored well.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they assigned you to something else, some specialized training. What did you do?
I ended up becoming an armored reconnaissance specialist.
Can you explain what
Yeah,
that
that was
training?
typically it was a reconnaissance role, a scout that was assigned to an armored unit, being a tank battalion typically. And what you would do is you would have often ground surveillance, portable radar systems that you would be able to set up that would cover a several square mile area without, they were small, could be carried by 2 people in a Jeep. Those types of things that we would support the armored units.
So going back to the basic training, it was mostly drills. Take us,
Yeah, it was just pretty conventional. You're taught the Army way. Basically, they kind of break you down, and you begin to develop dependence on your fellow soldiers, your buddies, and so you break your identity down somewhat, and then they build you back up, and then through the physical conditioning, basic training with weapons, hand-to-hand combat, those types of things, learning the things about what to do if you're captured, because again, this was the Vietnam era, and so there was a real chance of being in combat and being in harm's way. And then just learning about things about the Army, the ranks. This went on for 8 weeks, and at the end, we all kind of got our assignments of where we were going to be going next to our advanced training.
Where did you go next?
I went to Armored Reconnaissance School in Fort Knox, Kentucky.
You stayed in the same place.
Yeah, basically.
How long did that specialized
That
training?
was 8 weeks.
And after that was completed, where did you go?
Then I was assigned to Korea. I received a couple weeks of leave. Then I went to Fort Lewis, Washington to embark to Korea.
How did you get there? Did you go by plane?
Yes,
or
by plane.
Yeah,
By plane.
I know it seems
Plane
I know it seems like an anachronism, to say that somebody got there by boat, but I've read people who've actually, they took a boat from Seattle to Guam and then Guam to Vietnam, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, but you flew to Korea.
Yes.
So going back to Vietnam, the specter of Vietnam's gone.
Yes.
From you, because you're being assigned to Korea. Now, how did you feel when you knew you were going to be assigned to Korea?
I was relieved that I had already made up my mind I was going to finish this out. I was going to go through and comply with everything, and being there was actually quite an adventure, and saw it through with minimal trouble, minimal disruption, and it was really quite an adventure.
Where were you assigned in Korea?
We were assigned right from
Deployed, I should say.
I was on the demilitarized zone, the border of North and South Korea. It was a radar operator.
Now, as a radar operator, what were you looking for? What was the radar looking for?
What we were looking for was movement of North Korean armored units moving down a specific valley towards South Korea.
Did you ever see anything?
We saw movement. We heard movement more than we saw it because they were able to camouflage the tanks under hay bales.
Hay bales?
Hay bales. And so we would hear on our microphone, on the headset from the radar, we could hear the clanking of track that were on the tanks. And then we'd have get our big starlight scope out in. We couldn't see, all we could see were these haystacks, and they were moving you wouldn't actually see them move. They would stop, and then you'd start to hear it again. You'd go back up to look, and it looked like the haystack had moved, but you couldn't be certain that, because there were a number of them out there. And so we didn't know exactly how many tanks were out there, but there were some. But it was a provocative move by the North Koreans to try to provoke a response.
That's what I was just going to ask.
From
Was
the
it more
US
of
and the South Koreans too.
Was it more of a show of strength or a provocative act, or maybe a little bit of both?
Right, to trigger a reaction that then they could use to escalate the situation.
Did it ever trigger a response?
No, it got close, but there was here we were like these 19-year-old GIs and these South Korean majors and colonels are asking us if we should have them fire on this, and we're, well, no, you have to go through channels, because we have regular communication with our division headquarters, keeping them apprised of a tense situation. But martial law was in place in South Korea at this time because of some really belligerent moves by the North Koreans. So there was a heightened state of tension to try to get the South Koreans to jump and maybe fire on them.
Did they ever?
No.
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 Were you ever fired at while you were
Yes.
on the... How often did that occur?
Well, we were warned that they were North Korean snipers, and that we should not have ourselves visible in the skyline.
Exposed.
Exposed, but sure enough, one day we were just not really paying attention, and boy, ping, ping, and gravel started flying around us, and probably 6, 7 shots came our way. So never saw 2 guys move so fast.
Anybody ever fire back?
No, we didn't have. We oddly enough did not have any ammunition for our weapons.
How? Oh, you didn't? Why not?
I was determined that the South Koreans were more than adequate to protect us.
Do you think they were?
Yeah, because there were a lot of.
Did you work with any of the soldiers?
Only in a very
Korea?
with some. There were some Korean soldiers that were attached to us. They would be as like our regular troopers, and then we got to know a few of the South Koreans that were there at our base. We would just see them in passing, and you just kind of saw a lot of them spoke English, and they were fascinated by Americans. Some of them didn't like Americans because that was the repercussions of things that were going on in the Korean War.
Well, Koreans were fighting in the Vietnam War.
Well, it
as
was more of the social things, because a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
GIs had Korean girlfriends, and now they had children as a result of that. And then the dads went back to the United States and never to be heard of again. And now we got this half mixed child with uncertain ancestry. Right, and so there's a certain bitterness in the culture about how they were used. And so now here's the Americans are still here. But by and large, I think they really appreciate what we were doing.
Well, we're still there.
Yeah, we're still there to this day.
Well, you mentioned you were shot. Was that just one occurrence, or?
There were other times that we'd always be on the alert for infiltrators coming through the fence, especially at night. And in fact, there was one night especially, and I was walking. It was about 2 in the morning. I was walking up. We had to walk up about 500 feet to get from where we slept up to the top of the mountain where radar was. And so it was a bit early February, or maybe early March, late February night. But it was very, very cold, and I was just walking up. I was about 100 feet up, and I saw these 4 people coming toward me who did not have uniforms that were recognizable as South Koreans, and they spoke English pretty well. And actually, it was a very terrifying time because I thought they were infiltrators and had killed the South Koreans right there. And I was like really exposed. I had an M16 with, of course, no ammunition in it. And so when the soldiers asked me for a cigarette, I thought for sure that was it. That this was my moment. And so then he thanked me and he moved on. Well, then I was really getting scared because one of our guys was still sleeping down below. I figured they were going to kill him, and I'm stuck in the middle. Anyway, so we radioed the in right away as soon as I got to the top. It turned out that they were special operation forces from South Korea just patrolling through the area unbeknownst to us. But it was a pretty terrifying 15 minutes.
Did you work with the South Korean military at all? Like
to some
individuals,
extent,
obviously.
not much, because they were strictly there to guard the DMZ and make sure there was no infiltration of the fences, that type of thing. They didn't really deal much with us. We would see them just in proximity. They were actually stationed approximately every 20 feet on the fence. And so where our tent and sleeping area was, there were typically 4 or 5 of them nearby. And, we got to know them a little bit. The ones who could speak English, we'd give them some sea rations and things like that, because their diet was pretty meager. Their conditions were very austere.
Probably a lot different than yours.
Yes, yeah, we lived a life of luxury compared to them. It was brutal for them.
How how long did you stay on the line, and then did you go back, or?
Yeah, we were typically assigned to be up for 3 days, and we'd be back for 3 days, but especially in the winter, we'd get snowed in, where at one point we were up there for 10 days because nobody could get to us to get us out. We had enough supplies to of fuel and food and gasoline for our generators to keep everything going. And, we lived outside all winter in tents.
That doesn't sound like fun.
Actually, when the equipment we had was it was all designed for winter.
For doing it.
Yes, so we had Arctic tents and down sleeping bags and the stoves and fuel. So we were quite comfortable, really.
Well, as long as you were in static.
And 19 years old,
yeah,
too.
Well, that, and you're in static lines too. You're in the same place,
Right.
For the most part.
We're not marching.
Marching
We're
around,
walking
which would be
500
totally
feet up
different,
to
right.
our radar site, 500 feet down to our sleeping unit.
What did you do when you had R&R?
We were basically off on those days. Those were our we could do pretty much whatever we wanted. We would go to the PX, we go to the theaters. We just kind of hang out with the NCO clubs. Sometimes we go to Seoul, which was a pretty interesting place.
What was Seoul like?
Seoul was it was just beginning. Today it's a really bustling place, much akin to Tokyo. But this time it was still it was really growing, but yet there were just amazing contradictory scenes. You had this bustling cosmopolitan city, and then right in the middle of it, you had people riding bicycles that had 400-pound pigs on. Just the juxtaposition of two a peasant agrarian culture right with the cosmopolitan urban culture. It was really mixed the entire thing. It was really fascinating too. And then there was a whole lot of building going on. Just amazing. It was really a neat place to visit. I was truly impressed.
Did you have much interaction with Korean civilians?
Not a lot, but wherever we went, we talked to them, and a lot of them spoke English, and they were very dependent on Americans because we had money. We could spend it rather freely too. And so we actually stayed at I think it was called the Intercontinental Hotel, which is one of the premium hotels in Seoul. It was very affordable and half empty. So GIs were certainly welcome there. We'd go to all kinds of restaurants, museums, all these kind of Korean tourist places, and yet they were really fascinating, just amazing, just a spectacle. There's nothing like I'd ever seen.
How did you stay in contact with your friends and family?
Letters, strictly letters. That was all. The phones were very expensive and very rare. It just didn't even make sense to call when you could just send a quick note. And I'd send letters to, obviously my family, girlfriend, brothers, and other friends. And sometimes it'd be a postcard, sometimes it'd be longer letters. But I was, I had enough interests going on amongst my friends in Korea, so I wasn't really homesick at all. I knew I was going to be leaving, and we just kind of marked the calendar off, another day, another day, another day, another day.
How did your parents feel about your service?
They were glad I had done it.
Probably even happier they weren't in Vietnam.
They were happy about that, but my dad had been in the Army. In fact, all of his brothers had military background. Two of them were lifetime service members. So it was just considered a rite of passage in his family that you just did this. You didn't question it, you just did it.
But you did question it.
Yes, I did.
And did you have any conflict with your father?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But I reconciled that. In fact, he prevailed on me. That's why I ended up going in. It was because of the relationship I had with him.
How did your mother feel?
She was kind of my dad took the lead on that.
Now, you mentioned his hesitance to go in. Was it something You just didn't want to be in the Army? Did you
Oh,
have
it was
a
my total opposition to the Vietnam War.
Okay. Now, that's where I was going with this question, because obviously you were serving at that time in the Vietnam War.
Yes.
That's
the
the
way
Vietnam
it's
era,
phrased,
yes, absolutely. And so I guess my next question to you is going to be, well, you've already told me, well, we already know the answer, because you said because you had an opposition to the Vietnam War. Could you tell us why?
Oh, because it was wrong. It still is. I mean, I'm still opposed to it to this very day. It was the wrong war for all the wrong reasons, and our involvement should have never happened. And then what happened to the hundreds of thousands of Americans that were sent over there was just a tragedy. So many killed, so many injured, so many suffering, just emotional scars for life, for really an unnecessary adventure that just should have never happened.
Now, somebody might say you served in Korea, and we had a Korean conflict in the 1950s. What do you think the difference was between
in the
two?
Korean conflict? That was an invasion by the North into the South. So, and philosophically, I was not opposed to being in Korea. I could see what I was doing there as useful and helpful. I had no opposition to that conflict whatsoever. Anytime a country is invaded by another, I think that its allies have to help it and to repel the aggressor. And I think that in the case of Korea, which has especially been shown throughout our recent history, is they're a very bellicose and belligerent nation, and they just have to be watched at all times. So the Koreans really need the American help to keep this enemy at bay.
Couldn't one make the case that North Vietnam was invading South Vietnam?
No,
Why not?
that was a civil war. I mean, there were other things going on,
right?
But
right.
The Americans really had no reason. Once it had basically after the French had gotten out, they had lost.
Yes.
That the Americans, I mean, I could understand why intellectually you could see that certain things were necessary, but I think that the build-up and the way the war was conducted was just so wrong. For so many reasons, and that it could have been done so differently. But they also needed to be aware that this was not an invasion like the North Korea,
what
South
happened in Korea,
right?
Right.
This was very much more a war of liberation, and that the dynamics were so different. And I think they were really misread by our government. That the military wanted to demonstrate that it could still fight a big-time war.
No, it was a different kind of war than what they had planned for.
Yeah, and exactly. They still thought they were fighting the Germans and things. We're going to overwhelm
or planned on fighting the Soviets for so long, and now
it was a proxy war,
Asia,
but this was basically a civil insurgency. And we basically were not able to affect the outcome of that, except delaying it, the inevitable. And now or Vietnam is now one of our trading partners.
Yes. And it may be increasingly an ally against China
just
in
like
the future.
ally, Germany and Japan are also very, so we have periods of conflict and then get through something. People forget.
Did you have any, because you hear these stories about people coming home with their uniforms on and getting a lot of abuse and that kind of thing. Did anything?
Yes, actually, I had encountered that as well. There was a real sentiment that once you identified yourself to people as a veteran, that many people, because of their opposition and didn't really dig deep to see, well, you're a veteran, but you never were in Vietnam. You were a veteran somewhere else, so that you were almost of necessity a party to this war.
Complicit somehow.
Yeah, and so the stigma was really real. It was very real. Now, most people, once they got to know you, kind of got, and see that, hey, you weren't like that. But there were some people who were really the hair trigger opinion. Be vocal about it, and also they'd be worried that you'd be going kind of psychotic, because that was happening with a lot of what had happened to these young men in Vietnam was truly awful, And now they're back in a society, and what they've been through, the society has no understanding of it and no way to deal with what's going on in them. We have a lot more with the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans that are coming back now as people are understanding. But back then it was like, suck it up and get over it.
Kind of like what World War II veterans were expected to do.
These guys suffered as well, with just years and years of torment, which no human being should ever have to do.
When and where did you find out you were going home?
Actually, I found out that it was probably in about, I was going to be leaving in December anyways, because I had my 13-month tour would have been up, and I would be going back and being stationed somewhere else. But as the U.S. Army was embarking now on the all-volunteer force, they were getting the soldiers that had been in hardship tours with Vietnam and Korea were two of them because they were so far away. And plus Vietnam had the combat element, and parts of Korea had it as well as where I was at, that if you had less than 5 months service, they just discharged you. And so that's what happened to me.
Did you go directly home? Back to
San
Michigan.
Francisco.
San Francisco,
San Francisco, and then to Wayne, Michigan. I left.
Did you have any problems getting a job? Oh no, they were probably holding the job for you.
They had to hold the job for me at Fort Motor Company, so I went back. I worked for another 6 months there while I kind of figured out what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
So you worked there. You worked there for 6 months, and then what did you do?
I quit and I took off across the country.
For how long?
Actually, I was probably gone for a year, and then I came back to Wayne, and that's when I decided I was going to go to Wayne State University, and I met a gal, and she lived in Detroit, and so I moved to Detroit, and then I started at Wayne State, and then about a year and a half later I met my current wife, Carol, at Wayne State, and she and I have been together ever since.
What did you study at Wayne State?
My official degree was communication, which was rhetoric, persuasion, and public address with minors in Russian history, geography, and photography.
When did you move to Riverview?
To Riverview in 1987.
When did you get married? Or are you married?
Yes, I am married. I met Carol at Wayne State, and after met her, we met in the summer of 1975, and then we started dating beginning in 1976, and we've been together ever since. Got married in 1977, and we were living in Detroit, and then in 1981 we moved to a family farm in Ohio for a year. We came back from there. We ended up in Grosse Pointe Park. My daughter Laura was born there, and I ended up getting a job with the managing the Detroit truck stop in Woodhaven. After driving from Grosse Pointe to Woodhaven every day for a year and a half, and I thought the job was stable enough, so we started looking for trucks, and we've been here ever since.
Mention your daughter Laura. Do you have any other children?
No, just Laura and my daughter Rachel.
Do you like living in Riverview?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I tell you, I liked it so much I never left. We had great services. It was a nice community, safe. Until recently, good home appreciation.
Well, that's not just
that's everywhere.
Probably that's everywhere.
But it's still nice, and it's convenient to me, and it's just a great place to live.
What do you do now? What's your occupation?
I run another truck stop in Monroe, Michigan, travel center here.
Last question. If you were to name one thing that you learned or experienced from the military and you wanted to let people know what that was, what would it be?
Well, I went into the military as a very unhappy camper. Didn't want to do it. I was still stuck. I was a 19-year-old, probably boy, I guess I would say. The military was adversity to me. I faced it, got over it, dealt with it, and succeeded in overcoming it. It provided opportunities for my personal growth. Got me into college and through college. And looking back on it, it's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. The fact that I didn't have to endure any awful combat, but just in terms of dealing with this situation, getting through it, made me a much better person.
Well, thank you for coming in today,
You're welcome.
Mr. Nall, and thank you for your service to our
This
country.
is
Thank
the
you very much.
moment.
Thank you.
This is the day when I send all my doubts and demons on their way. Every endeavor I have made ever